I still remember the exact sound the door made when he left. It wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It was soft, almost pitiful. Like it, too, was ashamed of what was happening. Tommy stood there in the hallway, holding a duffel bag he'd packed in silence. No shouting, no pleading, no explanation. Just that eerie, heavy quiet that fills a home when love has finally died. I was standing by the kitchen sink, my hands damp from washing the dishes, my heart hammering in my chest. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't even look back. He walked out like I was nothing. Before I continue this story, make sure you subscribe on this channel and let me know where you are watching from in the comments section. We had been married 32 years. We'd raised 2 children together. We'd built a bakery from nothing and had buried his mother side by side. I gave him my life. My youth. My loyalty. And he walked away without even a flicker of remorse. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe he just needed space. Maybe this was one of his moods, the ones where he got quiet and pulled away, only to return 2 days later with flowers and a guilty smile. But this time, the flowers never came. I waited a week. Then another. I still made 2 cups of coffee every morning. Still placed his slippers by the heater. Still set the table for 2, even though I ate in silence. But when I called his phone on the 14th day and heard, "This number is no longer in service," something broke in me. Not a crack. Not a splinter. A break, deep and real. I sat on the floor and wept like a widow, even though there was no body. Only absence. How does a woman grieve a man who's still alive but gone? Small towns don't stay quiet for long. At first, the whispers trickled in like rain, gentle, infrequent, and easy to ignore. But soon they turned into a storm. Customers at the bakery began to pause mid-order, their eyes filled with cautious pity. Friends offered too sweet smiles. Neighbors hesitated before waving. "Have you heard from Tommy?" they'd ask gently, like they were asking about a missing pet. I lied, at first. "He's visiting his cousin in Oregon," I'd say. Or, "just needed a break." But the truth was a secret I couldn't carry alone. It was heavier than flour sacks and far more suffocating. One morning, Stella came into the bakery early. She was my oldest friend, the kind who knew when I was lying, even before I opened my mouth. "June," she said, holding my flour-dusted hands, "you don't have to pretend. I know he's gone." That was the moment I let it out. I cried in the kitchen as the oven preheated, as cinnamon rolls waited to be glazed. I told her everything. And in return, she held my grief like it was her own. It felt like the first time I could breathe. Nights were the hardest. During the day, I stayed busy. I baked. I cleaned. I managed the store. I talked to customers and even laughed sometimes. But at night, the house was too quiet. The bed too cold. I kept rolling over, half expecting to feel his warmth, to hear him snoring or mumbling about the leaky faucet. Instead, there was only silence. The kind of silence that screamed. I began talking to myself. To his side of the bed. To the ceiling. Why, Tommy? Why now? I wondered what I'd done wrong. I went over our marriage like a police investigator at a crime scene, looking for clues. We had our arguments, sure. What couple didn't? But we were still there, every morning. Or so I thought. Now I began to question everything. Was he unhappy all those years? Did he resent me? Was there another woman? The questions circled endlessly, and the answers never came. Only the ache remained. It arrived 3 months after he left. A thin white envelope tucked into a stack of bills. No return address. But I knew that handwriting. I knew it better than my own. It was from Tommy. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a short note, not even a full page. "June. I'm sorry. I had to leave. I couldn't keep pretending. This life, it wasn't what I wanted anymore. I hope someday you can forgive me. Please don't look for me. Tommy. I stared at those words, numb. No explanations. No mention of the children. No goodbye. Just, gone. And that's when anger found me. Hot and raw and wild. For the first time, I wasn't just sad. I was furious. How dare he? After everything we'd built. After all the sacrifices. He walked out like I was a pair of old shoes too worn to keep. I tore the letter into pieces, then sat down at the kitchen table and cried all over again. But this time it was different. This time it was the beginning of something else. Rage is a strange kind of fuel. It doesn't last forever, but it gets you moving. I threw myself into work. I repainted the living room. I rearranged the bedroom. I joined a walking club and started attending Sunday service again. Every new step felt like rebellion. The bakery became my haven. I added new recipes, put up fairy lights, and welcomed more community events. People noticed. They smiled more. They lingered. And so did I. For the first time in months, I laughed without guilt. I began to remember who I was before Tommy. Before marriage. Before I let myself be defined by someone else's presence. I was June Carter. I had grit, and hands that made magic out of flour and fire. I was a mother. A friend. A woman who'd loved deeply and survived betrayal. That counted for something. Her name was Ava. 17. Bright smile. Nervous hands. She came into the bakery one afternoon asking if we were hiring. We weren't. But I hired her anyway. There was something about her, a sadness she tried to hide. I recognized it like a mirror. Over time, she opened up. Her mother was struggling with addiction. She was helping raise her little brother. She needed the job. And she needed someone to believe in her. I became that someone. And in doing so, she saved me, too. Helping Ava reminded me that purpose doesn't come from having a partner. It comes from giving what you have to the world, even when you feel empty. Especially then. One chilly morning, as frost clung to the bakery windows, the door jingled and in walked someone I hadn't seen in years. It was our son, David. He hadn't been back home since Tommy left. The distance between us had grown not just in miles but in grief. He blamed himself, or me, or both. I wasn't sure. But there he was, taller and wearier than I remembered. He hugged me hard. "Mom, I'm sorry it took me so long." And I forgave him with every beat of my heart. We sat for hours, talking, eating apple pie straight from the tray. He asked about the bakery, about Ava, about my garden. And then, softly, about Dad. He wrote to me, too, David said. I didn't know whether to cry or curse. But we talked. Really talked. For the first time in ages. And I realized healing doesn't always come in grand gestures. Sometimes, it's just a shared slice of pie. After David left, I found myself going through old drawers. Tucked in a shoebox were the dozens of letters I had written to Tommy in the months after he left. Letters full of confusion, rage, sorrow, and eventually silence. I never sent them. But rereading them now, I realized they weren't for him. They were for me. Proof that I had survived. That I had found the strength to stand, to bake, to love again. I burned the letters in the fireplace that evening. Not out of anger. But as a kind of farewell. Goodbye to the woman who needed answers. Hello to the woman who no longer did. Love found me again. Not in the way it had before. Not with flowers or promises or rings. But with Ava calling me her second mother. With David visiting more often, bringing stories of his travels. With customers leaving notes on napkins saying the bakery made them feel at home. And one afternoon, with a quiet man named Walter who began stopping in every Friday, just to sit and talk about books. It wasn't romantic, not at first. But it was gentle. Safe. Honest. And that, I realized, was a kind of love too. Walter had lost his wife 2 years before he met me. She had passed away after a long illness, and he had spent the next year in silence, letting the dust settle on a life once full of laughter. We talked often, about music, poetry, our regrets, and our hopes. One evening, he brought in an old vinyl record of her favorite jazz singer. We played it while I closed the shop. He hummed along. I swayed slowly to the rhythm. It wasn't a date. But it felt like something. And slowly, week by week, he became a fixture in my life. A presence I no longer feared. Ava graduated high school that spring. She wore a bright blue dress and a cap slightly too big. Her mother didn't come. But I did. I sat in the front row and cried as she walked across that stage. She looked at me, her eyes shining, and mouthed, "Thank you." Afterward, we went out for ice cream, just the two of us. And she handed me a card. Inside was a single sentence, "You saved me." But the truth was, she had saved me, too. Nearly a year after Tommy left, another letter came. It was longer this time. More honest. He told me about his regrets. About a woman he had run to who left him months later. About how he lived in a small town now, alone. He said he still thought about me every day. I wrote him back. 1 page. Simple. I loved you. I survived you. And I forgive you. But I will not come looking for you. Goodbye, Tommy. I never heard from him again. And that, strangely, was a gift. Spring came with lilacs and laughter. I reopened the bakery after a short renovation. We added a little reading corner. Walter donated half the books. Ava painted the walls. Business was good. But more than that, life was good. I had finally begun to live in the present. Not in the shadow of what was lost, but in the light of what remained. David called weekly. Ava began college classes. Walter stayed every Friday. And me? I smiled every morning without needing a reason. One quiet evening, I caught my reflection in the window. Hair grayer, wrinkles deeper. But my eyes, they were fierce. Steady. Alive. I whispered, "You made it." There was power in that. Not triumph over Tommy. But triumph over despair. Over fear. Over the belief that I was only whole with someone beside me. The woman in the mirror had been broken. But she rebuilt herself. And she was beautiful. Sometimes, customers ask me if I've always lived here. If I've always had the bakery. If I've always smiled so easily. I just tell them, I've lived many lives. And I'm still living one more. They don't need to know everything. Just that the bread is warm, the coffee is strong, and the woman behind the counter has loved, lost, and loved again. Because that's the story I choose to tell. The story of a grandma who was broken, but never beaten. And that, dear reader, is the truest story of all. To every woman who's ever been abandoned, to every grandma who's ever sat quietly in the silence left behind by a love that ran away, this is for you. You are not broken beyond repair. Yes, the title alone stirs 1,000 emotions: pain, confusion, betrayal, and loneliness. A husband walking away from a marriage is not just a departure, it is an earthquake that shakes your soul, rearranges your identity, and leaves the pieces scattered in a storm you never asked for. But here you are, standing amidst the wreckage. And that, my dear, is something to be proud of. Let no one tell you that your age defines the strength of your heart. Being a grandma doesn't mean the journey is over, it means you've lived long enough to know that heartbreak doesn't have the final say. You've earned every wrinkle, every tear, every laugh line, and every scar. They are the map of your survival. And when a man walks out on you after years of promises, dreams, and building a life together, it is not a sign that you were unworthy. It is a sign that you were brave enough to love deeply, even when others failed to return that love faithfully. Being left doesn't make you less. It doesn't strip you of your womanhood, your power, or your grace. It only reveals the truth of your resilience. You see, true strength isn't in avoiding pain, it's in what you do with it. Will you allow the abandonment to define the rest of your days? Or will you rise, shake the dust off your weary soul, and reclaim your story? You are not the villain's victim, you are the hero of your own legend. Maybe you gave your husband the best years of your life. Maybe you raised his children, fed him with love, fought battles beside him, and prayed through every storm. You built a home out of sacrifice and hope, only to be left behind like a forgotten memory. But here's what he couldn't take with him: your dignity, your courage, your worth. He left because of his weakness, not your inadequacy. He ran from his responsibilities, not from your love. And now, it's your time to rise, not for him, but for yourself. Maybe you spend your days surrounded by silence now. Maybe you wonder if the years ahead hold anything worth living for. But I promise you, the best is not behind you, it's still being written. Love may have betrayed you, but life still wants to embrace you. Look around. Maybe there are grandchildren who need your wisdom. Maybe there are other women who feel just as abandoned, just as lost, and you can be their voice of comfort. Maybe your story, full of heartache and healing, will one day become the reason someone else doesn't give up. You are not alone in your sorrow. Across the world, in homes quieted by betrayal, in hearts left cold by sudden goodbyes, women like you are rising. They are reclaiming their peace, finding laughter again, learning how to dance in the rain of their grief. You are among warriors. And you belong. So grieve, yes. Cry when you need to. Mourn what was lost. But don't stay there. Don't camp out in the wilderness of what-ifs and shattered dreams. There is more. There is healing waiting for you. There is life still worth living. Take a walk. Smile at strangers. Write your story. Cook something beautiful just for yourself. Watch the sun rise and remind yourself, you made it through the night. The next chapter is yours to shape. Not defined by who left you, but by what you choose to do now. You are not just a grandma left behind. You are a survivor, a nurturer, a queen whose throne still stands, empty beside you maybe, but solid beneath you. You are not broken, you are breaking free. Let this pain be your rebirth. Because love didn't leave you. He did. And you, my dear, still have so much love to give. To the world, to your family, and most importantly, to yourself. You are never too old to begin again. So go ahead. Begin.